all of the tensions between Pakistan and India have slowly been relegated to what we would call a societal and public backlash. But in terms of Prime Minister Modi's triple crown moment for this year, and we're talking about a deal with the United States, a deal with the United Kingdom, and a deal with the European Union, nothing has gotten in his way. And many in the United States believe that these have an impact in actually isolating Pakistan further. So nothing is stopping Prime Minister Modi from achieving this geopolitical grand slam.
Interesting triple crown moment. And is that going to culminate, Samir? We'll get on to Europe in a minute, but is that going to culminate in a US-India bilateral trade agreement, a deal by Diwali around mid to late October?
Yeah, Sri, that's what people are projecting. I mean, in fact, the starting pistol of the trade negotiations has been over the past few weeks. Next week, I think you're going to see some announcement from the United States and India, an accord to pause or ameliorate some of these reciprocal tariffs, which are set at 26%. But by no means will it address the long-standing matters that have plagued a U.S.-India partnership. And I think you're going to have to see some major announcements in terms of foreign direct investment from India and some large purchases made in agriculture, energy, and defense to placate the president's appetite.
I'm glad you mentioned defense, because the defense deals are really going to define the US-India relationship and no doubt be a centerpiece of a trade deal. Will there be an even bigger focus on defence cooperation because of the events of the last 1 or 2 weeks between India and Pakistan, Samir?
I don't think it's going to enhance them. It might accelerate those conversations. Frankly, there's still a little bit of reluctance within both the U.S. industrial base for defense and the Europeans in sharing certain kinds of technology, certain kinds of intellectual property. And those problems, I think, are going to prolong and complicate conversations. But to be truthful, I think you might see accelerated talks in terms of advanced technology and surveillance and electro-optical tech. You might see some advancements in drone capabilities and partnerships in manufacturing. So there are sort of what we call sweet spots within the defense platform ecosystem where you might see India play a role, just as it has in the automobile sector, where it's a tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 major manufacturer for the OEMs. They might play that same role for the Boeings, for the Northrops, and for all of the other major U.S. defense companies. I think that's where you're going to see the most aggressive enhancements in the years to come.
We've already seen a UK-India trade deal. I know there's still some work to be done there, but are we going to see an EU-India agreement before a bilateral with the United States? There's clearly momentum in this direction.
There's certainly sentiment within the Indian government to continue all these conversations concurrently. Remember, this is Prime Minister Modi's third term, and third time's the charm for him. He's not wasting any time, just the same way President Trump is not wasting any time. Prime Minister Modi might be having conversations with 2 or 3 or 4 countries and blocs. President Trump's having it with 50 or 60 countries. So I think there's every expectation for Prime Minister Modi to make sure as much gets done as possible before year's end, because ultimately, you want companies to invest in India, because India is not about make in India anymore. It's about scaling in India. And Prime Minister Modi wants to see all that capital, all that hard work he's put in to building infrastructure now culminate into investments which are creating economic activity. And it seems that the world is being pushed into India faster than they're being pulled.
It's interesting, Samir, how India's efforts to diversify and lock in trade partners and linkages, nothing seems to be off the table. Even improved relations with long-time rival China is on the table, although it's being tested now. We hear from Pakistan crediting its Chinese-made J-10 jets for shooting down IAF Rafales. Is India ultimately being forced into a corner where it has to choose alignment with India, alignment with the United States or China?
Not at all. India's had a long sort of ethos of non-alignment. I think that has persisted, and I think that stands strong against the Gandhian culture that the country has espoused since independence. What India needs to kind of consider is what moves are tactical and what moves are transformational. With China, those moves are likely tactical. Remember, they're a partner of proximity, and you share a border with them. You got to be careful, and you really need to understand what you want to work with them on and what you might not want to. Whereas relationships with the European Union and relationships with the United States are transformational. Let's put this into perspective. The United States is now closer to a deal with India than it is with Canada or Mexico. That should really tell you something, that the neighbors of the United States are not even close to a deal in terms of friendshoring or allied partnerships, but they're closer with India. This is about transformational relationships versus tactical ones.
Trump has announced this executive order, and that seems to favor a low-cost or lower-cost pricing environment for treatments and drugs, and especially generics. Does that work in the favour of companies like Dr. Reddy's, who are looking to increase their footprint in the United States?
I think it absolutely does, but the devil's going to be in the details. What President Trump has announced is what they call a Section 232 investigation on the manufacturing of pharmaceuticals, meaning that the United States as a country, from a national security standpoint, needs to know how to make these things. So if there was a conversation to occur between President Trump and his administration and companies like Dr. Reddy's, it would be, hey, we'll continue your market access, but you better start thinking about moving some of your operations here as a way to counterbalance the inflow of your products. And at the same rate, the United States has long been plagued with a very convoluted, complex, and at times troublesome healthcare industry. Pharmaceuticals are way overpriced in the United States, and President Trump has made it clear to the American people that that's got to stop. He's trying to defend the average American consumer's pockets where it hurts the most, which is taking care of their day-to-day lives. So the question remains, can India be a productive partner in achieving the president's goals? Or are they going to think about this from a market opportunistic standpoint to gain market share? Because I'll tell you, you can't gain market share in the United States right now without having a little bit of skin in the game. And I think there are plenty of industries that India represents, whether it's the auto industry or the steel industry or the textiles industry, that they have put that skin in the game. Look at the Wellspuns, look at the JSWs, look at the Mothersons. There are a number of Indian companies that not only keep their market access, but they've expanded in the United States, and that's where the sweet spot is.